Well, and we're live and we're back. Welcome, everybody, to The Cold Rush. I am your co host, Caspian Lukey, joined by my much wiser co host, Eric Wiegand. And Cold Rush is, as you may remember, everything for cold outbounding, reaching out to potential prospects, and sales, and really everything in between. My background is in sales. I'm kind of the on the boots, boots on the ground perspective.
He's
Former
on the
SD.
boots.
Yeah, exactly. On the bootstrapped by my boots. Uh, I'm a former SDR, former SE, current AE. Eric has a much more eclectic background. Eric, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, former sales guy, former leader, RevOps, and now founder of both Anthro Test Labs for go-to-market engineering, as well as Demonstro for all of your leads. So feel free to reach out to me if you need either of those, because we are always selling. But Caspian, what are we covering today? I think this is something we tossed around a little bit, and I'm really excited.
Yeah. Uh, we on this podcast talk a lot about sales. And we kind of dance around this concept, but today we're going to dive deep into what actually moves the needle. What are things that you can be doing, that you should be doing, that tangibly lead to results? And so we are going to be covering everything that really helps move deals forward and makes a difference in your day to day experience as a rep.
Yeah, and we can sum that up as like 80-20 rule, right? And this is a philosophy I think that you can take to the bank as a salesperson. I've just like adhered to this in my personal life, right? And if you don't know this concept, it's basically that 80% of your work is worthless. And 20% is good, right? And so when we apply it to sales, we can look at the broader spectrum. Like, let's say I'm a business owner and I'm looking at my current clients. What I can say is that 20% of those clients are actually bringing me 80% of my revenue. And so, what you're trying to do with that 80-20 rule, and it's never hard and fast or as easy as this, but you're trying to look at which clients that you have, who's bringing in the most, and then go after that. And so this 80-20 rule can apply to how you're building your lists, right? Like who is ICP that mirrors directly those clients that are bringing in that 80%. Or as we're applying it to today, what are the 80 or what is the 20% of activities that's bringing me 80% of the outcome, right? And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today of like what are your day-to-day activities? What are you getting in the weeds with? What just feels like, hey, I'm working, but really when we take a big step back and look at the 1,000-foot view, is it really progressing your deals? Is it really progressing the work that you're doing? Right. And so that's kind of like where we're starting out. And it's activity versus progress. And that concept is really important, right? Because I think that there's so much that ends up being, that feels like work, but actually isn't. And, I hate to say it, but leaders are often the biggest, I would say,
Offenders.
offenders. That's perfect. Yes, that word eluded me. The biggest offenders are often leaders in two ways in my mind. A lot of times leaders will say like, "Hey, you should be doing this, this, and this," but they haven't been in the trenches for very long, or it's been a while since they've been in the trenches. And then also, if you take a look at the leaders' calendars, you'll often see meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And, the sensibility is, well, I've been busy all day. Therefore, it's gone fast and I feel like I've worked hard. And we kind of need to break this down and out of your mind of like, are those meetings actually leading to results, right? And so that applies to the leaders, but that applies to you as well, right? So I'd love to get like what your thoughts are there on activity versus progress. What are some of those activities that you would kind of bucket in one space and then the other?
Yeah, I think, well, one, I'll definitely agree with you that I think like leaders can definitely be the biggest offenders of not only being busy without necessarily being productive, but also being obsessed with activity, right? And like, this is what's tough. I love sales because it is a role that gives you the unique ability to directly quantify your performance, inputs and outputs. I think the challenge is a lot of times you can become obsessed with inputs in a negative way. And what I want to be clear here is like I am not justifying not working hard, but an example that I'll give of really making sure that you're prioritizing the 20% that leads to 80% of the results is when I was an SDR, I did enough of every type of activity to know what I was uniquely good at. And I know this will come to no
Yep.
surprise to people who've listened to our podcast, but what I felt really confident in was gifting. And I knew that, like, I knew my metrics for gifting so well. I knew if I was behind my number that I would need to send X amount of gifts. And of course, I'm following up on those gifts like via cold call, via email, via LinkedIn. But I
Yep.
knew that that is what was going to lead to success. And I used to get, some of my friends on the SDR team would joke with me, or they would pretend to be me and be like, it's called a dial block, not a dials block, because I would make, and it sounds crazy, like 10 cold calls in an hour. Now, you might be like, that is crazy, but I would book like eight, well, not 8 meetings necessarily in a day, but I remember December 2022, and maybe this isn't good for me to admit, I made 12 cold calls that month. Now, I had 100% conversion rate. Every call I made was not only answered, but I then booked a meeting. Now, of course, that is kind of crazy and that is an outlier, but my point is I knew
Yep.
exactly what led to success. And I remember being frustrated because there was a time where uh, at my SDR org, we got really focused on dialing. And again, I am a big believer in putting in the hard yards and putting in the hard work. But I remember being frustrated because there was a day that I had booked 2 meetings and I was at something like 118 dials and we were supposed to get to 120. And I was planning on getting there. It was like 2 more dials. But I remember
Yep.
getting Slack from one of the sales development leaders, not my manager, but one of the leaders being like, hey, why aren't you at your dial number for the day? And bear in mind, I was like leading in
Yep.
meetings booked that day, but hadn't gotten to my call number. And I just, in that moment, felt so frustrated and was kind of like, hey, we're missing the point here. And so I know I'm railing a little bit, but and I'm not advocating for this, but I remember having a conversation with my manager and saying, hey, if I have to have an uncomfortable conversation with you about missing quota or missing my activity metrics, I'd rather have it be about missing my activity metrics. And he was very
Yep.
understanding. Like, look, make sure that, do what you need to hit your number. And then of course, like the the activity becomes less important. I say this all to say, doing I think trying enough things to know what you are uniquely good at is helpful because then you can double down on that. And then when you get feedback from someone of like, oh, well, why aren't you doing this? Still maintain an open mind. But if you know what leads to success for you, you don't need to feel pressure to look busy because I do think sometimes people look
Yep.
busy at the people try so hard to look busy at the expense of actually being productive. And I remember that
Yep.
in the SDR team where people were frantically trying to even find enough prospects to make 120 dials a day rather than actually timing those calls well, researching them well, doing unique types of outreach. So I rest my case, but this is something that I really care about. And I think that unfortunately, people can sometimes be focused on the inputs in the wrong way, though, of course,
Yep.
inputs are very important.
Yeah. And I think it comes to like a bunch of different activities that are all pulled together, right? It's researching the right accounts
Yep.
and taking the time to do that. Not just, as you said, like, oh, I'm struggling to find, all these different people that I can like call. It's first researching those accounts and saying, like, okay, I have an assumption, I have something to say about each one of these accounts. Let me find the people behind it and start reaching out, right? And then it's to what you said, which is like, okay, what is my means of reaching these people? And there's no silver bullet because it's going to be what you're good at. It's going to be to what channels your market responds to, right? So like for my market, it could be like, hey, I'm a shitty cold caller, but all I can do is cold call. That's the only way that I can reach my people. They don't listen to email, they don't go on LinkedIn, whatever. Like my prospects just don't do that. And so it's finding that channel market fit, right? That says like, okay, this is the right channel for me to be reaching out on.
Yeah.
And honing your skills to support that, right? If you have the full, LinkedIn, email, and cold calling, then you find what you're good at and you double down on that, or gifting, right, with the follow up in one of those or all those channels. So that's kind of like the first thing that you have to do is make your list and then find the channels that work. And realistically, I think you brought up an excellent point as well, which is so often leaders want to put the metrics on inputs and they are the very bottom metric, right? So, how many dials have you made a day? When what you ultimately want and the business wants is outcomes. They want revenue, right? And there's like a whole bunch of different processes or steps within that workflow to get to revenue. But I always found as an SDR leader in the past and as a sales leader later is that those are not going to get you where you need to be. You need to start doing the metrics that are at least one step further. So if it's, the number of calls, the better one to go by is the minutes of talk time that somebody has had, right? Because like if people have gone an entire week and they've had 5 minutes of talk time, then you know that there's something wrong. You know that there's, you're not reaching out to enough people. So you need a power dialer. You need better contact details. Your deliverability rate is low. And so that's why like for emails, right, it's important to see like what the reply rate is versus what, how many emails were sent, because you need to fix those numbers.
Yeah.
And that is, for emails, at least there's like an aspect of copy and deliverability. For cold calls, it's pretty straightforward. If somebody picks up and they're just like not having those conversations, it's either a coaching situation where you're like, hey, listen, we need to work on your, objection handling or this or that. Or it's like literally we're not getting to the right people, we're not getting the right numbers, and then those are the fixes that you have to make, right? And so I think that that's really important for the leaders who are listening to focus on, as well as for you as an individual contributor.
Yep.
To go and push those types of things. Or if your leader isn't tracking it, track it yourself, because that's going to be a way better diagnostic of like what you can improve in order to get there. And so like, your leader at the time, Caspian, that's looking at, hey, he's got a number of bookings, but he's looking at like, he doesn't have the call metrics or whatever. It's just like, that's a conversation that honestly like shouldn't have even been had. Like if you are getting the outcomes that they want, now it's a whole nother story if like those outcomes, you're booking those meetings and all of a sudden it's, Eric at a company and he keeps showing up for your meetings with no intention of buying. Well, then that's another kind of step that they have to look at of like, is this a qualified meeting? Are these good conversations? Yada, 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 going down this rabbit hole. So I think that that's really important, is like, are the metrics that you as an individual looking at, and hopefully your leaders are looking at this, but are you tracking your own metrics in the right way to enable you to make any fixes that are necessary, right? And that's what's going to get you there.
Yeah. No, agreed. And again, I just think that like to your point about the outcomes being achieved, like there's inputs and outputs, right? And like the inputs generally, the goal of the inputs is to achieve the outputs. If the outputs have been achieved and there's still an obsession with like the inputs, I think that then you're like, it just, I think defeats the purpose of like, what is the goal of what we're doing here? for, right? And it just,
Yeah.
I do think people can like get drawn down the wrong path. And also to your point, like I do think sometimes people focus on candidly the wrong metrics, right? Like I do think, number of calls made, emails sent, LinkedIn, people in sequence, like that's a helpful starting place.
Yeah.
But I think that also, if you want to really create pipeline, you want to make sure that your calls are well researched, right? Like you want to make sure that
Yeah.
you have a legitimate reason for reaching out. I remember, and I still stand by this, it's like if you can't answer why should this person care about your product or your service, you shouldn't call that person. You should either
Yeah.
find a person to call that you have a legitimate reason to reach out to, or you should do more research, right? And meaning
Yeah.
that like either you don't know enough about this prospect, so you don't know why it's relevant to them, or you're talking to the wrong person, right? And this is
Yeah.
also, and so that's just where um I do think sometimes people can spin their wheels focusing on the wrong things. And also, now again, you anything can be um, manipulated, but I remember being really deliberate about when I made my calls. And I still stand by this, right? Where it's like I will typically make a lot of my calls between 1 p.m. and 2:30 Pacific because a lot of my calls tend to be East Coast, and like a lot of my prospects rather tend to be on the East Coast, and people
Mm-hmm.
generally are more likely to pick up a call in the first hour or the last hour of their day because they're typically out of meetings. And then even more so if you call within the bottom, within 5 minutes of the bottom of the hour or top of the hour. If they do have a meeting, you are likely either calling as they're switching between meetings, or they will maybe think that you are their next meeting. Now you want to be upfront and you don't want to pretend to be that. But my point is like you want to optimize for pickup rates, right? And so I remember
Yeah.
being really focused on that. And I want to be clear, it's not to say that like don't call at any other time of the day, but I do
Yeah.
know, and I knew of reps that like had really bad pickup rates because they were calling constantly at like 11:14 a.m., 11, 47. And like it's who is typically calling you in the middle of like at a random time of day. It's either like something serious like your mom or a family member, or it's someone cold calling you, right? So my point is like
Yep.
you gotta focus on uh not just the bottom line number, but like am I doing what I can to optimize for things that are actually going to be helpful, right? Like am I actually optimizing for pickup rates, right? Because again, it's
Yep.
like the same way that with emails, you want to, yes, like email sent is helpful. You can't book any meetings if you don't send emails. But then you want to look at deliverability. Then you want to look at open rate. Then you want to look at reply rate. Then you want to look at like meeting booked, right? Because each of those things is going to tell you something. If you have a lot of
Yep.
replies with no, if you have a lot of opens rather with no replies, your deliverability is probably good, but your copy needs some work. If you're getting like if you're getting a low open rate but a high reply rate, then it's like, okay, maybe you need better subject lines, better deliverability because the content of the message is good. Same thing with cold calls,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you want to optimize for pickup rates, and then it's like, okay, where are you getting hung up on in a call? If you're getting hung up on where, like if it's at the objection, if it's like after you pitch, then it's the problem with the pitch. If it's your opener, it's your opener, right? Like there are much more worthwhile metrics to focus on, and just looking at email center calls made only tells a portion of the story, right? So
Yep.
I just think
Yeah.
that is something that people need to be mindful of as as they think about metrics, right? And like what actually creates pipeline, things like that.
Yeah, and I think that there's like a push and a pull to this, right? Because like the answer isn't getting so caught up in all these details that you're not doing any action, right? Like I would say this all the time to my teams was like, don't let perfection get in the way of great,
Yep.
right? And sometimes, or like other times, I would say like good enough is great, right? And so you need to still manage your time in a way that you are putting it towards these activities, but not overkill on it, right? Like not every prospect needs all this time that you're doing. And so like when we look at these like high ROI activities, some of these and like I'll put kind of my like idealistic cap on here. Some of these activities are like better served for your manager to do than for you to do. But if your manager doesn't have the bandwidth and you end up doing it, then, go ahead. Like, for instance, I think that one of the things that, like, if you can pawn off, it's finding the accounts and finding the context. I think more and more we're seeing today that list building is being done at the manager level, the RevOps level, like something like that. And then those accounts are being given. And I think that this is honestly, and I've done it both ways. I've been the person who's assigned accounts. I've been a person who's been looking for my own accounts. It is a huge time suck. And so if there is opportunity to kind of like ship that out to somebody who's centralized, who can do it on behalf of the organization, great. And you might enjoy doing it because you might be sitting around, making clay tables and yada, yada, yada. And it's a lot of fun, but like, it is a waste of time ultimately. It's something that needs to be done, but it's not immediately helping you achieve what you need. It's like, again, it needs to be done, but maybe it doesn't need to be done by you. And so having that like account assignment is something I recommend pushing out. But if you can't, make sure that you're doing the right amount of time on it, which is, finding these accounts, using the tools out there, using automation to pull a lot of this stuff, to find these accounts, to do the research, whatever, and then go through. And once you have a good set of accounts that you feel really good about, then you can take the time, I think, to find the right person within those accounts, use some automation to grab some larger groups of people, and then kind of dig through and familiarize yourself with those prospects. And then those high ROI activities are like making the calls, sending the emails, sending the gifts, shooting out LinkedIn, and being intentional about it, right? Fixing your copywriting, fixing your script, reviewing your recorded calls in order to make sure that you're giving it the best that you've got, right? Investing in tools that's going to make this easier. The one thing that I would say that was specifically left off of here, because I think it's a huge waste of time. Again, just like list building, it's essential, but it's a huge waste of time to be doing manually. And I can speak from my career. I spent probably 80% of my time doing this, and it's filling out the fucking CRM. It's filling in Salesforce, filling in, HubSpot, whatever. And
I was just talking about this actually. Is this just
yeah, it's let me be clear, right? You need that information. That information is key. It's key to sales, it's key to marketing, it's key to CS, it's key that everybody has it there. That's the only way the business is going to be able to learn and improve. It's the only way that, you're going to be seeing major industry trends and all that kind of stuff. But here's the bottom line. Today, that's solved. I mean, maybe it's not perfectly solved, but like it's pretty much solved. You can pipe in your Gong or your, I use Fathom, Fireflies, whatever it is. You can take that MCP, you can put it right into the CRM, and it'll give you a summary, and it'll give you all that like sweet stuff that you need, right? Outreach has it. Like all these tools have a recorder and have an AI summarizer, and you can map it, and it can poke it into like all the boxes that you need filled. I literally, as a two-man operation for my startup, have that. I have that capability. Now, all right, I do run go-to-market engineering company, and so like I know how to do this. But like if you don't know how to do it, get your RevOps person to do it. If they don't know how to do it, then get me to do it. I mean, like, bottom line is like, right. This is like a solvable problem that I think so many people are just wasting their time trying to understand stuff, and there's no like the most you can do is like put a Dropbox in there to like have like, okay, what happened here, right? And then all the reps just rely on notes. Some give notes, some don't give notes. It's all over the place. There's no standardization within the CRM. And so there's no way to actually learn about this. And I think that's why for the last like 10 years that I've been in sales and stuff, it's like I'll get people who have, CRMs for 15 years, 20 years. They're like, it's just a big mess and we don't know what to do with it. Like, we don't know what to do with this information. Some of it's there, some of it's not. I mean, the amount of companies that I meet that don't have the CRM data in there, or it's miscategorized or whatever, is just wild. And so I am just like the biggest proponent of stop manually putting that shit into your CRM and automate it, because it will make everybody's life easier. The people who are trying to understand the stuff, the people who have to make the calls, send, the communication out. It's just like, I'm sorry, I had to get on my soapbox here, but like, it's a huge time suck and I hate it and it's stupid. So stop doing it.
No, it's true. And yeah, I think there's like, I do think as we talk about working smarter and harder, I think it's important that both things are true, right? Like any of
Yeah.
these items, this is the true that I think generally most of us know what we should do, and it's just a question of like whether we want to, because I do think
Yeah.
that people can, to your point, like how do I put this, over correct and then be like, oh well, it's not
Yeah.
4:25 p.m. so I can't make any calls, like da 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 da, right? Like that of course is not the case. It's working
Right.
smart and hard, and I do think that people can waste time doing a lot of candidly like doing a whole lot of nothing, right? Like I think a lot of times, and I'll be honest for myself, like sometimes I would spend too much time writing emails, like trying to make it absolutely perfect. And today, especially in the age of AI, like it is, you want to make sure that you are putting in enough activity so that you have enough metrics off of which you can base whatever, you know, um, assumptions or whatever, not results, but like whatever conclusions.
Yeah. Your experiments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to have enough data to back it up. And so I do think that a lot of times, like when I was an SDR, I definitely wasted time trying to over architect emails. Also, and maybe this sounds silly, but I definitely recommend power dialers because I spent a lot of time just clicking, just literally just clicking like
Yeah.
this number, that thing, what the disposition was, all that stuff. And then also even like lining up tasks for the next day. I think that like the best reps will do that, but I used to spend a lot of time just trying to like get make sure that I had the people to call for the next day ready. And a lot of that nowadays can be automated or at least like more streamlined where
Yeah.
you will have a clear understanding of okay, these are the people I'm calling the next day. So I think a lot of admin work definitely doesn't need to happen. And I think that um, I do still think that you need to work hard the to put in enough work so that you have the confidence to know that you do something specifically well. And that's typically like the advice. I remember when like new SDRs would come on the team and they'd ask for advice, and I would still tell this to someone is like, try enough things, like no, go broad, go wide enough so you know what to go deep,
Yep.
right? Because like again,
Yep.
I know people who are God's gift to cold, who are like just the most incredible objection handlers ever. So they can just like rip dials if they're in a bind, and they'll generate pipeline, right?
Yep.
Other people swear by LinkedIn videos. Other people swear by other things, and some people are candidly like good at everything. But
Yeah.
you do need to try enough things to know what it is that you do well, and I think that like you need to be honest with yourself about, am I doing enough work that I know, like have I done enough, have I run enough experience so that I know what I'm doing well, and then double down on that, right? Like that is really the crux for
Yeah.
me, what is important to happen. So
Yeah, and I think that that's the most important piece is what you said there, is giving yourself enough time and enough experiments within this specific channel to
yeah,
do it. You can't just make 100 dials and say, I'm not a cold caller, right? It's like there's a lot of variables within that
yep,
to find exactly what's going to work. And people just give up too quickly on any given channel. So, like, my recommendation is like you spend, you know, at least a month with at least 100 calls a day just doing cold calling, right? And, you change your experiment. Maybe like week one, you try something, you review your calls, you see what worked, see what didn't, listen to other people's calls, sound bites, right? Hopefully you're getting coaching along the way, and you're just moving incrementally along to say like, okay, I got them at the beginning of the call. Let's get them all the way to the end of the call and book a meeting. And then you do the same with emails, right? Like you're just, as you said, like putting the experiments out there. You try some copy, you switch it around, and that should be like, you put out 400 emails, and then you see what your, open rate, if you're tracking opens. I don't recommend it, but, whatever. See what your reply rate is, though, coming back. And then you switch your subject line. See if you can get that reply rate up. Then you change the copy. Then right? And you're just going through these iterations. And again, like there's opportunity, at least with like email, for some automation. I think the best emails are still sent out like personalized from your Gmail or your Microsoft Outlook or whatever. Those are going to have the best deliverability. It's going to have like the most you in it. But there's opportunity for, if you're doing these large scale things, there is opportunity for automation there. And then same thing with LinkedIn, right? And so give yourself the time that it takes to make sure that these experiments are working and you are finding what you're truly good at, not just what you're willing to quit early, right? But I think that this is like all well and good. We're given like a lot of nice advice, but at the same time, like we started this episode talking about how leaders are, maybe the worst offenders here. And so how do you take this as an individual contributor and actually push this up the chain, right? How do you make change happen within your organization, whether it's like the metrics that you're being goaled on or the strategy in which you're taking? I'm curious, like, have you had to make those? It sounds like, I mean, even from the Gong example, right? You had to do that, but like,
Yeah.
what is your advice there?
Yeah, I think, well, one, one, know thyself, right? Like, one, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to have a reason for why you're doing what you're doing, because
Mm-hmm.
the that makes the story that you're telling to your manager, and like, what you're telling your manager should be true, but it makes it
Yeah,
uh,
probably.
it makes it an easy story for them to tell to their managers, right? And so I think that to effectively manage up, you need to have real conviction in what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so again, like for the Gong example, I knew that, I fortunately had a proven track record of hitting quota. I knew that there was this big pressure of like, we'd just gotten a power dialer, or we were doing a POC with a power dialer. And so there's this pressure to like hit 120 dials a day. I knew that the ultimate goal though was to get people to get more participation for quota, because we only had a few reps hitting quota. And so I knew what I was doing to hit quota. I knew what I was intending to continue to do, what I was intending to add, what I
Yep.
was intending to remove. And that is what I told my manager. And that's why, again, and I was not saying it in a way to be difficult, but I was saying it in like a very honest way, where, again, I literally told my manager, like, if I understand there's this goal, and like I'm happy and I want to do the things that we need to do, but if it comes down to it and I'm pressed for time in a day, and if it comes down to me having an uncomfortable conversation where it's either I'm missing quota or an uncomfortable conversation that I'm missing my activity metrics, I will choose the latter every time.
Yep.
And he understood that, he respected that, he agreed with that approach, right? And so that
Yep.
is and as a result, that's the approach that I took. But that was only because I knew exactly what I was doing, why it was different than what was prescribed, and I knew the results that I could expect. And so I was able to communicate that. And again, like, to be clear, I got extended a longer leash because I had that. Had that changed, that message may not have been as well received by my manager. So I think that's important to bear in mind. But I think you just basically need to know, for you, well, at least success, have conviction in that, and then be upfront and direct with your manager about like what your plan is, what you're adding, what you're removing. But that's been my experience. I'm curious, like from your side, being both a rep and a manager, like how have you managed up, and then how have you maybe had reps manage up to you?
Yeah, I think the key is, and this is just saying what you said in a different way. Come with the data, right? Do your due diligence to find out what is working. If you went to your manager and you said like, "Look, I have the outputs. Why are you pushing the inputs?" Right? It's like a very clear like, "Oh yeah, no shit." If so, there's like two kind of like different paths, right? The one path is you're already being successful with outputs. It shouldn't even be a conversation that you're not hitting your inputs. If you've got your outputs, then it's an easy case, right? I'm hitting it because I'm doing this. I'm going to stick to this. Let's go down that rabbit hole, right? I think it's a harder conversation when you are not being successful, right? And you're not hitting your goals, and yet you're held to maybe this input metric, and you have kind of like a sense inside you that, hey, like going a different path might have better results for me. And so that's a trickier thing to prove. But the nice thing is that, like with sales, a lot of this you can always track backwards, right? So I'll talk about an instance that I had. My team, we were making a bunch of calls. We could, because we were held to this call metric that was passed down from my managers, right? And I was like, calls are not the way to do this. I'm seeing LinkedIn actually be way more successful. And so like, I think that this is the route that we should go. Push back, push back, push back. So this is technically like my reps raising to me and then me raising to my manager, right? So I took the time and I wanted to see like, okay, what is actually causing this? So at the time we had a 3.5% pickup rate, right? So right from there, you're saying that like, okay, with the contact details that we have, with, the all the information like our whatever Zoom info or Apollo or whatever it was, their contact details that we have, we're calling these people. 3.5 out of every 100 dials is not being picked up. So basically from there, right, like we did our conversion and like all that kind of stuff of once we actually get the call, what's, the team's conversion. And we basically said that every day somebody would have to make around like 450 calls at that time, right? And so that's like insanity, right? So you basically have two things. You have to change your contact details so that you have better numbers. So whoever your provider is, like get better numbers. Or you have to do, something like a power dialer that's parallel dialing in order for you to get that, because, 450, you could probably get that in 3 hours or so with a parallel dialer running at, five at a time, right? So it was basically like, hey, this is what we need to get into place, or we need to go a different route, right? And so if you're unwilling to change the providers for these, then we need to go down a different route. And so that's how like we were able to kind of like articulate that and make the math make sense. It's like, hey, like, are you going to sit here and physically dial 450 people one by one? Like it's just not possible. So I would say always come with the data, and like, work it around if you don't have the results to prove it. Just like, do the math on however that's going out and do your experiments, right? Never go to your leader with just a problem. Go with a proposed solution. It's the same thing that you're going to do with your prospects. You're reaching out and you're saying, here's a problem and here is our solution to your problem, right? You're doing the same thing with your managers. You're selling upwards and you're saying like, hey, I know we want these results. These are some experiments. This is the time, make it like a SMART goal. You want to, measurable and time bound and all those things. For the next 3 months, I'm just going to send emails and I'm going to do this. I'm going to send out for every, I'm expecting to send out 10,000 emails in the next month. Every 400 emails, I'm going to, change the copy so that we can see it and yada, yada, yada. And like, whatever, come with a plan. The second thing I would say is like, think of yourself when you're doing this like almost like an engineer. And like if you have ever heard of like a Kanban system or whatever, basically for those who don't know, it's like a system of like cards. And so you say like, okay, within this time period, and folks are probably already doing it with like their calendar to say like, this is my call block, this is my this is my that. These cards in the Kanban are basically saying like, this is what I have the capability of doing in a day or within a week or in a month, right? These are the activities that I want to get. So I want to get so many calls out that results in so much talk time, that results in so many meetings, that results in so much revenue, right? And so when you're doing your experiments, it is very good to set up a Kanban system for what you're actually doing. And that way, when you go to your manager, you say like, okay, if they want to try some new experiment or they want to do this, you say like, okay, this is my day. This is how it's filled up. This is what I need to hit my metrics and to get those outputs. What would you deprioritize in order for me to prioritize what you're saying? Because one of the things that we haven't hit here is that, people are pulling you from all different directions. And they're saying like, oh, I have a new idea. Let's run this. Let's make this a priority before you've had time to experiment on your past one. Or let's have 50,000 meetings in this week that pulls you away. And then why didn't you hit your activity metrics? So really putting that in there and being transparent and communicative of like, hey, this is getting in the way of me ultimately accomplishing my goals. I can do this, but what can I push out in order to pull this in? And I think that makes it very easy to be like on the same page with your manager and with leadership. And again, it's something that, project managers and product managers and engineering teams use, but I've used it very effectively in a way that says like, listen, I want to take everything that you're saying, all your ideas very seriously, but I can only devote so much time in a day. So in which place would this be switched out with something that I'm currently doing, right? And have we given it enough time, the thing that we're currently doing, just as we keep harping again and again, to fulfill the experiment, to change all the variables and to say, confidently yes or no of, is this working, right?
No, I think that makes sense, and I think that's probably a good segue to talk a little bit about some kind of hard hidden plays of the week. I think mine's kind of quicker, but I think that again, people know that I'm big on gifting, but something I've been doing to get, especially either to move deals, to like keep a deal warm if I don't have a touch point in a little bit,
Yep.
or to just do like a light re-engage before, if it's been a little bit since I've connected with a prospect, is send them Crumble cookies to their office. People love, generally really well received and allows you to come into the meeting with a little bit of goodwill. Not a super value add, but something that, people get pretty excited about in my experience.
Or spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or spaghetti. Is that what's your what's your play of the week?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like, if I'm thinking about like 80/20, I would say at the beginning and end, especially if you're an SDR, the list building, I think that there's like great ways to automate this. And when I say automate, there should always be a human in the loop. So you should always validate what is coming out of things. But if you're using Clay, if you're using like N8N, if you're just using Claude, if you're using like whatever, use automation to build your account list. And I will say like, you should probably find the prospects yourself.
Hmm.
You can gather information about those prospects using automation in certain ways, but like to find the accounts, there are certain things that you should understand and have like a really good grasp of your ICP. And if you do, it's really not that hard to pull good accounts that fulfill that same criteria as the accounts that are driving, 80% of your revenue already. So automate that, outsource it to RevOps, like whatever the case is. Use Clay. Like there's so many different tools now that you should be doing to build those account lists. And then on the back end, like I said, plays of the week, I automated my entire, like these episodes of the Cold Rush, of all of my calls for Anthro Test Labs and Demonstro. All of that is being recorded. I basically take that, have it broken down into like what's useful for my CRM. I obviously I have two different CRMs, and I have HubSpot. Like I have some, super simplified, whatever, HubSpot CRM. I have all of that data mined from my transcript, filled into my CRM, and I do an audit, right, to make sure that it's all getting there and I'm not losing anything. The full transcript is logged in there. All of that is here. The reason I brought up the Cold Rush is because I'm going one step further to say, like, okay, of all the calls or all the podcast episodes and all my calls, can I mine those for content that I'm putting out there, right? So like this is like one step above. If you're a leader listening to this and you're thinking like, hey, I need to keep up with this like content race. I need to keep up with like, I need to create references. I need to get clips from people and use like quotes from a customer or a prospect. I need to figure out like what is resonating. I basically am analyzing all of my conversations, my Cold Rush episodes, to see like how can I turn this into content? How can I, if I hear something from somebody, can I put a diagnostic of like, does this change my time frame of my selling? Does this indicate if they're a current customer that there could be a churn, or that there's a reference potential to another company or somebody else there? Like this is stuff that like you can mine very effectively and turn that one conversation into content, both written and auditory. Can you turn it into diagnostics? Can you turn it into a training resource? Can you, receive feedback based on it? There's all kinds of stuff that you're already collecting with this recording. So why not do more with it? So, it's long-winded, but plays of the week, I'll summarize it as automate the beginning and end of that process. And if you don't know how to do it, then call me. And I'll at least tell you how to do it. If not, you can hire me.
That's a good one.
Yeah. But as far as like sales, it doesn't scale, right? I know that this is like 80-20. So like, what's something that has been effective for you? And I'm going to have to like think about this for a second. So I'm glad that you're going first.
Yeah.
What's something in this 80-20 rule that doesn't scale, but has been effective for you in the past?
I think that, well, I have done an inordinate amount of research on prospects before that has paid off. I've gone down rabbit holes where I've, read blogs by blogs that people have written or listened to interviews that people have done. Now, the truth is, like, did I listen to like an entire 45-minute interview? No. But even doing that extra bit of research and then pulling that, a phrase they said or something that they wrote has been something that has paid dividends for me. And again, I do think there's an inherent lack of scalability because there's no guarantee that prospects have like written something or done an interview. But if they have, I do encourage people to go that extra mile because the ability to reference that will generally pay dividends in the outreach that you do. So that's something that I've done that I've definitely benefited from, is like listening to interviews, referencing that, reading people's blogs or books. I've even bought a prospect's book and sent them a picture of me and my sister with the book. So I've done a lot of things on that.
I feel like, like I'm thinking about this because I know you send out a lot of books. I feel like you should just get like a bookmark with your face on it and like do a branded bookmark that you're sending out with all of these. Because I feel like, hey, if you're sending out books, man, that's like the first time they could see your face, right?
Fair. Not a bad idea. I like that. What about you?
But yeah, I think for me it's I would say, I mean, like, just because it's like recent in my head, it's also gifting, right? And specifically like the drop off campaign for the spaghetti, just because like there are probably like way more time and resource and cost effective, maybe not cost effective because it wasn't that expensive, but time resource wise, ways that I could have spent a week rather than like aggressively doing a lot of research about companies who are going to be in the city who have hybrid, schedules or in office schedules, finding the right person, and then, you know, making a box of spaghetti and then individually going to these offices and dropping it off and whatever. Like, I'm a founder of a company. It's probably not like the best use of time of how I'm, going to be spending it, to kill a whole week doing that. But at the end of the day, like, it was something that worked pretty well. But again, like, it took that long to get 44 boxes out. Imagine trying to scale that to 1,000, right? But I'm in the unique position of if you're running a company in the early days, you really have to do stuff that doesn't scale in order to get you those, first 100 customers, first 1,000 customers, whatever. And then you can start going in the scale book, because just like, a rep, as you were saying early on, just like a rep starting out, I'm still in that process of figuring out like what works best, not just for me personally, but as the different brands, for bringing people in. So it's really doing that experimentation and getting those things that work, and then worry about scaling later.
No, I think that's a good. I think that's a. I think that makes sense. I think that takes us to hot takes. What do you have for us for a hot take?
Yeah. So my hot take is I think that we should bring dirigibles back. And if you don't know what a dirigible is, like a blimp or whatever, we have the Goodyear blimp, but that's about it as far as like famous blimps are concerned. Like, I remember like seeing pictures of, and actually last weekend I was on the Chicago architecture tour with my parents while they were in town. And they pointed out one of the buildings and they were like, oh, that building is flat on top because they thought there would be like more like blimp travel, right? And then the Hindenburg disaster happened and then like blimps were out. But like, honestly, can you imagine you could take like a sky cruise around? Like, if you saw what the Hindenburg looked like, not like as it's exploding, but like the pictures inside, it's like, I mean, it was, I guess, the Titanic of the sky, because it all ended up happening the same way. But like, bottom line is like, can you imagine just like, you go out for an evening, you're like tooling around the city, you're watching it, like they can make these things big enough where it's like you have a room, you can like explore. Like, I'm just like, I think that would be the coolest thing ever,
Yeah.
to either go out for the evening or go on like a longer like sky cruise where you're like landing in different ports and you're doing this. Like, we have the technology now to make sure that it doesn't blow up. Like,
Yep.
I'm confident of that. Like, use helium over hydrogen, or use like, non-explosive materials. Use hydrogen, but then use like a, battery powered and electric powered one. Like, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a dreamer who wants a freaking dirigible ride. So
Yeah.
that is my hot take. Bring it back in mass.
I like that. I think that I do think that, yeah, Sky Cruise is definitely like a very cool concept, and I do think yeah, it would be. I actually have not thought about blimps in like years, so yeah, I support that. I support that. I think of like Goodyear when I think of blimps.
Yeah.
So
Think of like, think of this. Like, think of a club, right? That like,
like a
it's
Sky
on
Club.
the ground. Yeah. And you get in it, right? And it takes off, and you're locked in, obviously, from like some hour to some hour. Maybe it like comes down every 2 hours or something like that. But you go out and it takes off, and you're just like partying in the sky, and it's like enclosed so the drunk people aren't jumping off. But like, dude, endless possibilities of like a pretty sweet situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I would love. I mean, again, Sky Cruise definitely has a nice ring to it. I think that, yeah, and mine is kind of, well, our hot takes would be a bad mixture because mine has to do with fireworks, and fireworks, if anything, are like a dirigible's worst nightmare. So,
Yes.
uh, I think that mine is kind of like on well is maybe somewhat topical given the time of year, but I'm really like not that into fireworks. I think they're overrated. I think that they just kind of do the same thing. It's just like they're loud. Some of them whistle, and I think it's cool for like maybe like 20 seconds, but then it's kind of just like more of the same, right? Like I just don't get it. And maybe this makes me sound very like 21st century, but candidly, I would much rather see a drone show. Like drone show seems way cooler to me than just watching a bunch of fireworks. So I know that may be a pretty hot take, but that is just me. It's just me.
I would say this, right? A couple points to it. One, don't film the fireworks regardless, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to watch.
It's true.
You're not going to rewatch it. Don't film the fireworks. Just watch them. The second thing I would say is I think it should all just be the finale. Because, like, I agree. Like, it can get a little tedious, but then, like, you're excited for the finale. And I've been to fireworks shows that basically feel like they're all finale.
Yeah.
So just shoot them all off at once. Like, that's exciting. The third thing I would say is the best part about fireworks, and I will agree with the long show, whatever, shoot off your own fireworks. Then you have a ball. That's
That I can definitely not endorse. That I think there's like that no. I will. I think it's well. I think often I can see why it's more fun, but I think the risk is
so much more fun.
so high and the reward is so low.
They're safe, man. Yeah, just like, don't have your kids doing it. Don't hold it in your hand, right? Like do it safely, but oh man, there's nothing better.
I am big. I'm realizing like I have some hot buns around fireworks. I'm super anti like personalized fireworks. I think they're so dangerous and such a nuisance. And they're not just dangerous for you, they're dangerous for the people around you. So yeah, I do not mess with fireworks like that. But
Well,
if that's your thing. That's your thing.
Where I'll be blowing up trash cans with an M80.
Good thing we don't live close to each other. Well, I think that's a good place to. I think that's a good place to wrap it. I think hopefully people enjoyed today's episode, and yeah, I think that we had some good nuggets in there, and hopefully people can better dive into what their 20% is that leads to 80% of their results.
Yeah, and tell us what we missed, right? What are the things that you're doing that is driving pipeline, the activities that you're using, like how you're automating your way out of some of this, the structure of your company and who is in charge of what, right? Like the specialization in order to achieve a bit more efficiency. So as always, like, subscribe, follow, whatever the hell it is. And we definitely enjoyed putting this together for y'all. This is going to air a while from now, but we'll give you a guess past tense, future tense, whatever. Yeah. Happy 4th of July. And enjoy the weekend, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.